Hello, everybody. I'm Nicholas Love, Chief Executive Officer with the Color Group, and certainly really glad that everyone's able to join us. Welcome to the first ever for Dope Thinkers Only webinar, where we're really focusing on what marketers or brands can actually learn from some of the most epic and historic rap battles that we've seen. Before we get started, I want to certainly invite some really dope, dynamic thought leaders and individuals to formally introduce themselves, their respective role, and then we'll get into who won either Drake or Kendrick later on. But I'll first turn it over to Willie Blue.
All right. Good morning, everybody. My name is Willie Blue. You may hear folks call me T throughout this webinar, so just roll with it. We'll talk about that later. But I am co-founder and chief brand officer with the Color Group. 20 plus years of marketing, branding, and creative experience. And at the end of the day, a hip hop fan, a culture fan, a fan of brand, and a fan of just learning. So excited to be here.
Thank you, sir. Johnathan Butler. And you got to show your shirt too for the record, brother.
Oh yeah, we got to let that roll. Nifty, baby. I did that's in the battle, but extreme brand marketer, and I love it. So
I was trying to prime people, like let them know this is what you're in store for. So get ready. No, I'm Johnathan, senior marketing strategist now with 10 plus years of experience, which is crazy saying that out loud. Specific focus in brand marketing, social media, and product marketing. Like Willie, huge fan of hip hop and the culture, and excited for today's discussion.
Thank you, sir. And your shirt?
Oh, yeah. High Power, Last of the Mohicans, featuring J. Cole and Kendrick.
One name that's missing, unfortunately, is Drake from that shirt, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. Safaniya Stevenson.
It happens. It happens.
Hey everyone, my name is Safaniya Stevenson. I'm a marketing advisor here at Color Group. Like Johnathan said, it's really weird to say out loud. Over a decade of experience. Started my career out in television news, being assignment desk and on-the-line producer, and then kind of stumbled into the wonderful world of performance marketing and integrated strategy. And by stumble, I mean Nick put his foot out and then push me. So that's how I stumbled into it. But super excited to talk about this today. I was just thinking earlier, kind of as we were going over our notes, I feel like we need to have some type of experience where people can sit in on the collaboration of these types of things, because this conversation to come to this conclusion today and these slides was so much fun. So I'm super excited to share with you all what we have today.
Cool. Thank you, Safi. And then Yaw Jeez, one of the most prolific emerging rap artists that I know. Certainly a hell of respect, man. Really delighted that you had the opportunity to join us for this conversation. But I don't want to steal your thunder, brother. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Well, thank you for that wonderful introduction. I appreciate it. My name is Yaw Jeez. I am a rap artist. Been rapping for over 20-something years. I have some standard rap projects that are out there on Spotify and Apple Music, as well as I've done a lot of rap music for sports entities such as ESPN, Fox Sports, Yahoo Sports. Been doing this a long time. I'm a huge, obviously, if I'm in the culture, I'm a huge fan of the culture. Nick presented this opportunity to come chat with you guys about recent happenings in battle rap. I was very excited, so I'm just happy to be here, and thankful to Nick too for inviting me.
No, much appreciated. It's just crazy for me to say that I'm 40. I want to talk about years of experience in marketing or communications, but we'll get into that a little bit later. So first and foremost, 2024 is the 25th anniversary of the term challenger brand actually being introduced. It was a phrase that was introduced in 1999 by an agency by the name of Eat Big Fish. Color Group is a diverse-owned challenger brand agency working across various verticals and offering various services. We really invite you to really engage with us. We're going to certainly open up the floor for more Q&A. We'll have certain polls, and we'll also have some articles that we'll share with all of the respective attendees. So, really buckle up because, we certainly are doing this for the culture, hence color for the culture. So in terms of how we're going to really approach this, right, one of the unique frameworks that exists with the color group is really our 4R methodology. And we're going to really attack this conversation through the lens of really evaluating brand intelligence. And I'm a firm believer that one of the biggest mistakes people make is that they are often in a rush to provide the right solution to the wrong question. And oftentimes in life, you have to be really steadfast about asking the right questions. At the Color Group, one of the things that we pride ourselves on is asking the right questions and doing so through this 4R framework of looking at brand through the lens of reputation, recognition, resonance, and relevance. Throughout today's webinar, we will be looking at some of the most historic rap battles and arguably the biggest rap battle recently between K-Dot and certainly Drake through this particular lens. So, excited to be able to kind of bring what we talk about at the Color Group of cultural intelligence, audience intelligence, artificial intelligence, human intelligence, to obviously one of the biggest discussed topics across social media in quite some time. And so, let's get into it, right? We talk about epic rap battles throughout time, right? Whether it was arguably one of the funniest ones with 50 and Ja Rule, right? Or, certainly Tupac and Biggie, or, Cube and NWA. And then, we'll talk a little bit about the being 36 in karate class and whether or not there was a layer of authenticity or truth to that between Nas and Jay-Z. And then certainly, Kendrick and Drake, and certainly as a J. Cole fan, I still got love for you, brother. But again, another conversation for another webinar. So let's first open it up, right, and really just talk about the cornerstone of this recent rap battle, and that was really looking at the speed of response. In marketing, we talk a lot about the importance of agility. So I want to first kind of toss this over to Safaniya Stevenson and really ask this first question, right? How does response time affect brand perception with your respective audience?
Yeah, I think it was really interesting because even as Nick and I were kind of keeping up with what was going on, he was like, "Hey, did you see Kendrick's response?" I was like, "Which one? Yesterday, today, 2 hours ago?" And I was like, I am burnt out keeping up with as many responses as they were going back and forth. So I think one of the biggest things, kind of especially from a brand perception, is when you wait too long, you allow the environment to take control of the narrative, right? So when you leave too much breathing room, you allow so much conversation to happen around you and around your brand. That conversation starts to shape brand perception. So in order to kind of get ahead of that, we need to respond thoughtfully but quickly, because we want to control our brand narrative. And I think, again, because of the speed of Drake's responses and Kendrick's responses, they were really owning those narratives before people could start to dissect. So in less than 48 hours, less than 72 hours, you saw responses coming out, because you don't want anyone coming in there and responding on your behalf. As a brand, you want to respond as you. So I thought that was something that was really interesting about this rap battle in particular, is because I honestly I had Google alerts at one point set up, because I was like, I cannot keep up with this. I cannot keep up in the order. And then, trying to follow on Twitter, and the people are saying, no, he already responded to that. Well, what are you talking about? And I really just need a timeline at one point of who dropped what and what was said. So that was kind of like the big thing that stood out about me, and some things that brands can learn is, that response time is super important when controlling the narrative and perception.
T?
No, I mean, I think she hit the nail on the head with that. I mean, at the end of the day, I always say, brands can't be dictated by the brand owner. I can't tell you what my brand is, because it's about your interpretation, your understanding, and your general feeling as to how a brand presents itself. But you absolutely have to influence it. And to Safaniya's point, those quick responses gave literally no time for anybody else to have a point of a perspective of opinion, but it was really a response to Drake or to Kendrick, telling what their story is or what their response was. And then the fact of Kendrick kind of predicting what was going to happen and having one in the chamber ready to go 30 minutes after the last one came out. It was like, yo, he's on top of it. So no, that completely influences the direction of brand, because you don't give folks a time to make up their mind either way.
Yo, geez, I know you're a big Knicks fan, and certainly I think I think what happened when Kendrick had, certainly that extra clip in the chamber was really a momentum kill, right? You oftentimes see in sports a team might go on a 15-0 run, and next thing you know, right, like that run gets kind of shot down. From your perspective, would love to kind of hear your take here on, the importance of responding, particularly when looking at the Kendrick versus Drake situation.
Sure. So it's ironic that you guys are all saying this because, back in the day, battle raps used to happen, at months at a time. Somebody would drop a track and you probably wouldn't hear nothing for maybe another month and a half, 2 months, depending on the time what it was. I can remember when Jay-Z dropped Takeover, everybody was waiting for Nas. Everybody kind of thought Nas was out of the loop or whatever the case may be. And then the diabolical move was Nas dropping Ether on Jay-Z's birthday. You know what I mean? It kind of was like a very diabolical move, right? So when you fast forward to I'm going through going through a history of rap, and I'll get to my point about this particular thing later. Is Drake is the person? Drake is kind of the person who kind of changed the template of all that. You know what I mean? It was against Meek, and let me not say Drake, but Drake was a catalyst. I feel like as time went on, obviously the way we consume content is quicker, so that kind of just changed with the way we approach battle rap as well. And then when Drake had his spat with Meek, Drake dropped a track called Charged Up, which was his response to Meek's allegations of ghostwriting. And we were waiting for Meek's response, and then 3 or 4 days later, Drake came with Back to Back, and it kind of just like changed the entire dynamic of how we look at battle rap. And now everybody kind of had this thing where they were forced to do that strategy, as far as just making sure you put out the track in a timely fashion, or before somebody else hits you with a back to back. The ironic thing about how this turned out is Kendrick using Drake's strategy in response to him, and then eventually winning the battle. I mean, we'll get to all responses later as far as he feels what happened. But I think it's just more of a lesson in as far as branding, like paying attention to your competitors, and knowing what they do well, and try incorporating into what you do, and then like expounding on it and making it better. I think that's a real branding lesson, because now it's like, remember, after Push-Ups came out from Drake, he dropped Tailor Made Freestyle, which was a response, which was like a back-to-back response, like, yo, where you at? We still waiting. And Kendrick, which was patient, waited his turn, dropped again, and then knew Drake was going to drop, and then had one already in the clip ready to go an hour after he dropped it. Completely just stole the entire thunder of what Family Matters was. And now, also diabolical is making the song a very singy, songy, very relatable, and also something you can play in the clubs, the radio, wherever. I've heard Not Like Us about 4 or 5 times today passing by my crib in New Jersey. You know what I mean? That's how much impact the entire just how much impact Kendrick had, and kind of like, I think he respects Drake as an MC. I think he respects him as a rapper, and he pays attention to what he does well, and use that against him to create a moment that I don't think we're ever going to forget.
Yeah,
I'd say strategically, I think he really it was like he had a power team behind him, and I'm speaking about Kendrick in that situation, right? Because in today's society with the internet and people chiming in, you have 48 hours to respond, no matter what it is, right? That's a meme, right? But Kendrick was really strategic in holding back, but he also realized from a brand perspective what that does for his value. Because I always kind of say that in general, Kendrick was a performance marketer versus Drake, in my mind, being a brand marketer. But he really flipped the tables in this situation where he was a brand marketer and thinking long term about what he valued which is really, when you think about being a Pulitzer Prize winner and all those things, his name means everything, right? It's not about the bag necessarily, but his name being solidified in rap and as a true lyricist. So him holding back like that, making everybody think, okay, here he goes again. Where is he? We haven't heard from him in years. And then him coming out with punch after punch after punch was so super strategic, and I think worked. So when you relate that to any other brand, right? If you're going to wait for a good reason, right? Don't wait because you're going through legal and all this other stuff and you're scared about putting something out. Really have something that you're going to punch with that is going to carry its weight.
Johnathan Butler. I think. Oh,
he might be having some connection issues.
Yeah, I think Johnathan might be having some technical issues. We'll try and bring him on a little bit later. Y'all, one of the things that I thought you said, certainly Teresa Weatherspoon, head coach of the Chicago Sky, used to talk to me a lot about this idea of personnel and tendencies, right? Understanding personnel, understanding who they are, right? But then, to your point, really understanding their tendencies of what they do well. And, just from a brand perspective, we spend a lot of time talking to our clients at the Color Group through the lens of competitive intelligence, right? And really trying to kind of identify perception versus reality mapping, right? What are the things that you think you do well? And then what is the reality of that, right? And how does that really kind of impact what your go-to-market strategy is, what your brand positioning is, which is why the reputation, recognition, relevance, and resonance framework is so important, right? Because are you known for the things that you want to be known for? and I think this is a critical question that brands have to answer every single day. It looks like Johnathan Butler is back on. Certainly, want to kind of get your take on really the response time and how it impacts or affects brand perception in this day and age.
Being prepared, and part of that means you have to think long term about your strategy, whether that's the short term, mid-term, or long term. For me, in this battle, I think Kendrick played the long game, whereas Drake was like, oh, this is going to be like another Meek Mill style type battle where we might do this for 1 or 2 tracks going back and forth. But I don't think he expected the level of veracity that came from Kendrick. I mean, even with Not Like Us, compared to Family Matters is technically, we'll say, the better of the diss tracks. But because Not Like Us came in such full force, it kind of just knocked the momentum away from Family Matters.
Yeah. Sorry, y'all, were you about to chime in?
No, I was not. I was just going to say sometimes the moment takes over momentum, because Drake thought he had some momentum coming, and all of a sudden it was just like, boom. You know what I mean? An hour later, I can remember waking up in the morning completely confused.
Yep.
I was like, wait. I'm going through the group chat and I see, okay, Drake dropped. Okay, let me go check the Drake track out. And when I went to go respond, I'm looking at the group chat and I'm like,
you missed it.
what's going on? You know what I mean? Like, it happened that quick. And then, like, obviously, it just created another discourse on all the platforms you can imagine. Like, all the dialogue on Twitter, all the skits on TikTok and IG, all the YouTube panel discussions and podcasts. It really, and I said this before, this is a monumental battle. Maybe like Nick said, might be the best or the greatest ever, just from the sheer amount of content from the two competitors, and then the residual content that followed after from everybody. It's just been people. To this day, people haven't stop talking about it. And for this day and age where we consume information so quickly and things pass so quickly, the fact that has it been over a week since Not Like Us dropped about over a week ago, and it's still talked about and still being discussed. So I mean, it was on CNN and NBC News and things being that when it reaches that type of level, it's not really going to go anywhere anytime soon. So,
yeah, point well made.
And to
And
add to that
oh,
point,
go ahead, Jonathan.
no, just adding on to that point really quick. It doesn't help that BBL Drizzy
yeah,
came out shortly thereafter, and now you have BBL Drizzy in almost every genre of music imaginable.
Absolutely.
You have BBL Drizzy in Merengue, you're done. You're cut. Sorry, boss.
So let's add on to that. Let's add on to that, Jonathan, because I think a portion of what you said about being prepared, and then Willie T, you had like this kind of piece about, you know, having a team behind you and like a team at the ready to go.
Mhm.
I think that agility in place when we talk about strategy really ties into what marketers can learn from that, because I think the examples that we have here, and when you said BBL Drizzy, it made me think of BBL Glizzy, which Oscar Mayer came out with and I was like, okay,
wow.
oh wow, Oscar Mayer is now on the train. But when we think about how quick you have to respond, and this is one thing, like when I'm talking about strategy and helping build content strategies, I am always talking to teams about like content libraries and tactic libraries. The BBL Glizzy that you saw in that advertisement was most likely not someone sitting down from scratch. That was a stock photo with that background, and they're adding that cultural layer of the mustard. That took someone all of maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes to design, with this addition of we're going to be a part of conversation. We need to get this up quickly. We have an asset library ready. We have a content strategy ready, and it fits within it. We're going to pivot. We're going to be a part of the conversation. Same thing with the two examples that we have here. This Oreo, the blackout, the power out Super Bowl tweet from Oreo.
Mhm.
This is not revolutionary design. It is not reinventing a wheel. It is cultural intelligence, responding quickly and using content that is already sitting in someone's draft. It's in the screenshots on someone's computer. And their designer, who happened to be free and not drunk during the Super Bowl, was like, hey, what if cool, let's do it. Same thing for Coors Light here. We have seen this ad from Coors Light using, we don't know how many iterations, right? But taking the little square out because the guy hit the ball into the digital display, and now running this as an ad with the culture intelligence, fits into the content strategy, and it is content and a content library and a tactics library that already exists. And I feel like those three pieces allow brands to respond so quickly when they are in place. It's when you don't have your content, when you don't have your assets, when you don't have a content strategy, and you can't have that quick conversation within your team to say, does this fit into our brand? Can we authentically participate in this trend? That is when you start to add time. And now, T, you were talking about legal, going through legal. We have to send someone out to go pictures. Can we get our photographer ready to go? Do we have our designer ready? Oh, but we also have 32 client projects too. And like 4 weeks later, BBL Glizzy would have been whack, right?
Yeah, it's been worth it at
They
all.
had to turn it around immediately. So you have to really have the pieces in place to allow that agility in your environment, in your marketing framework. So I think that's really important kind of context there that everyone kind of was leading up to here, is you have to have your team, and you have to have your content strategy and all the pieces ready to go. You might not necessarily know the exact moment when you need to deploy them, but you'll be ready and you can do it quickly. So I think that's a really big thing here that brands can learn, because we've seen a few people kind of hop in to it. But when I saw Oscar Mayer do the BBL Glizzy, I was like, okay, this is a thing.
That was the one for me that I sent to I have a Drake stand in one of my group chats, and that was the one that I sent to him that I said, hey, stand down. You gotta stand down.
Well, and Safia, I kind of want to chime in on what you said, and I think of all the things, having assets ready and all that, while extremely important, a team who cares and who has cultural intelligence is like, it sits on top of all of that to me, right? Because you can pull assets together. To your point about the Oreo piece here, from a design execution standpoint, very quick, very sharp, but you had to have somebody paying attention, somebody who's at the ready, understanding what's going on in the room, what's relevant to the marketplace, and then to your point earlier, what is authentic to your brand and how you can leverage that, right? So that cultural intelligence in a room is everything. I mean, when I think about our team, you're one of, I mean, all of us do that, but you're one of those people, right? You're always at the ready, thinking about what's going on, what's in the know, and how we can bring something to life.
It's why I'm constantly exhausted. I'm just tired all the time because I have notepads and laptops and everything filled with micro ideas and everything. But hey, I'm ready. I'm tired, but I'm ready.
You stay ready. You stay ready, so you don't have to get ready. Real quick, I want to wrap this up so we can kind of get to our next point. But something that both Johnathan and Safi really talked a little bit about that I want to kind of bring up at the macro level is brands and people exist across digital or in the social landscape really for four fundamental reasons: to educate, to inform, or to entertain. And those three things ultimately allow brands to build relationships with people. And I think if you were to kind of take a step back and you look at the tonality of some of the initial battles that the initial tracks that kind of came out from both Drake and Kendrick, they both kind of skewed on the educational and informational component. But when we start to kind of get into Not Like Us and then the rollouts, right, of the of the BBO Drizzy and so forth and so on, right, that started to kind of skew into the whole entertainment component, which then really elevated the virality of the content that was kind of going on. And to y'all's earlier point, started to kind of create more skits and challenges and things of that nature. And so when, to wrap this up, to Safi's point around content strategy, content framework, so forth and so on, always understand that it's about educating, informing, and entertaining to ultimately build the relationship. All right, so let's kind of get on to the next one, and this is really about adaptability, right? When I move, you move, just like that. Hey, certainly, want to really start to kind of dive into, the importance of really optimizing and using social listening, artificial intelligence, cultural intelligence, and human intelligence to adjust when you re-enter or even enter or exit the battlefield, right? I mean, let me add a Nicholas Love remix to that point. So certainly, Johnathan Butler, I want to kind of come to you on the importance of really intelligence as a guiding factor on how you move.
No, great question. For me, thinking about this question, and even in my own personal experience, the best environments are ones where, Nick, you're going to love this because I was first introduced to it by you, is environments where you test and learn. And part of that test and learn means having the space or the ability to maximize your speed, but also your experimentation. And you can see that not only in this battle, but just in marketing in general. So what does it look like? Well, it boils down to listening to real-time insights and being able to gather that feedback about what customers are saying about your product, what they're saying about your brand. Personalization, being able to tailor those messages so that it's not homogenous and that it's able to reach that one-to-one relationship even at scale. And the third and final point for me would be that human connection that we all seek, that is so important to our messages, right? Because the last thing you want to do is to create this big splashy campaign. It's really not hitting anyone in a relevant manner. And then there you have wasted time, energy, effort, and resources that, quite frankly, no one else cares about.
Great point. Safaniya.
Yeah, and I think to thinking about all the levels of intelligence here, and again, what Johnathan was talking about, like the different layers, I think that's one reason why, as a marketer, it's so important to have a variety of so many skills when it comes to social listening, artificial, cultural, human, but also within your brand, your agency, your organization, having someone that kind of captures and is really good at a mixture of these things. Because before, like I think this applies also to the Kendrick Drake battle, is before there were the quids and the brand watches of like this traditional artificial techie side of social listening, we were literally just on social media consuming and using what we were hearing from an anecdotal standpoint, and then take those anecdotes and say, well, what can I do with this? And I think that played a pivotal role kind of in this rap beef as well, as because I think in our own minds, even though I am not a rapper at all, and I cannot probably write a bar to save my life, is I was still reading the social media. I was still Nick pause tweet. I was reading the tweets. I was reading the narratives that were happening online, and I was already forming in my head, what should Drake respond with? What should Kendrick respond with? And that was me, as just me on my couch here eating Cheetos just on my phone. And so being able to use that level of intelligence as a marketer too, saying, okay, if I work in tires or if I work in makeup, as I'm still a person, I'm just on my phone and I saw a L'Oreal ad. How can I take something so anecdotal and use it kind of under this guise of social listening? So I think sometimes people, when they hear social listening, they immediately think, I've got to be in a query tool doing Boolean and running queries, and I'm stressed out. I don't know how to do that because it's so technical, tactical. You can start by just listening. You can start by being on the platform, starting to curate, follow things, create folders, and create queries around those things to start to introduce yourself. And I think a lot of it just comes from pattern recognition over time. You don't have to be a Boolean expert in Quid to be good at social listening. You don't have to have the most premier package on Brand Watch to have excellent social listening. You just need to be a good listener, and you need to see patterns. And like T said earlier, you just have to care. Take the information that you have and move it forward. And I think kind of what we were talking about too is just taking that intelligence and saying, well, how can I use this so when I re-enter to better what was happening? I'm testing, optimizing. Okay, I'm going to go back, see what the chatter is. Testing, optimizing. Also, not looking at myself in a silo. And I know we do a lot of this too with color as well. It's like we do a lot of competitor auditing and looking at competitors. I'm not just listening in a sound chamber about what people are saying about me. When Drake's track dropped, you know, Kendrick and his team were looking at the Drake related tweets to see, saying, oh, you won. Oh, he could never come back with, he could never say, but I'm going to use that for my social listening, and I'm going to craft a better story in response to what his audience is saying. So sometimes even using other people's audience narrative to help build yours if you're sharing an audience as well.
Quick point. Well, 2 points. So if you're not technical in terms of being able to conduct like a social listening experiment, the words of the greatest rapper to ever walk the face of the earth, type it in. Google's your friend, bro. So that's point number one. Willie, you're looking at me like you don't know Jay-Z is the greatest rapper.
No, I was waiting for the line because I completely agree with you.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. No, and that second point, even in the context of this rap battle, if we go back in time, there was a brief period where we had some AI release tracks and we were trying to confirm the legitimacy of it and whether or not either one wanted to fess up and be like, yeah, this was me, I did this. Let me rephrase. Whether or not those were official releases, none of us will ever know. I will say the tracks that were released afterwards hit on every cylinder. So I wonder, is that an A/B test and we were all part of that experiment? I don't know.
That's pretty good.
That's a good point, because even that just kind of created some like anticipation for what we were about to experience, right? Like we weren't sure exactly if it was them or not, but we didn't think any of the AI tracks were like hitting, but it created some discourse. It kept the conversation going while we weren't getting anything from Kendrick. While Kendrick was, waiting patiently. You know what I mean? It just kept it going. Where's Kendrick? And then like AI tracks come out. Everybody's trying to decipher. Wait a minute. Mm-hmm. Is that such and such? And also, Drake dropped a track with AI after it, and it was very, very polarizing, the response that people got from it. I thought it was a dope way to, I thought it was genius. Yep. Right. In the age we're in, I think a lot of times, and this can go for brands as well. Sometimes we're just scared to like move to the next thing or like embrace what's next. And it was inevitable that we were going to get AI. It's happening now. People have been using AI on music for like the last year and a half, 2 years consistently. For a well-known artist to have entered into that stage, but in a very creative way, I thought was just super dope and super innovative. People were upset about it, said it took away from authenticity and so on and so forth. But I don't necessarily agree with that. I think the artificial aspect of it, because certain things you just can't escape. You know what I mean? When things are moving and then things are moving on, you just can't escape it. You just kind of either embrace it or get left. And Drake chose to, dive in. So I respect, and that's another part about this battle that I respect about Drake is him entering. It didn't work out so well, but he took the challenge. So
as far as the workout so well, right? So just for the record, I'm a fan of both guys. But think about this: when Drake battled Meek,
here we go.
There was no discussion about who won that. We're over here now, literally waiting on TMZ to tell us, did Drake win? Did Kendrick win? Now, winning is relative, and we'll get to that when you get to the end. But think about it, right? This guy who, from a polarizing standpoint, a lot of people don't like, being Drake, hung with Kendrick the entire way. Like, we're literally waiting for the next round, whether you like him or not.
Right.
They were going bar for bar, song for song.
Right. So I actually, it's funny because I actually wanted to bring this point up about just overall, like I think all of us are probably somewhere in the same age group and been listening to rap somewhere around the same amount of time, and I think we can all agree that the rapping over the recent years has just been lost. People are not really rapping anymore. It's more about vibes, more about the music, and kind of like creating this like feeling per se, as opposed to just like diving into the actual raps. And I think a lesson people can learn is also just adhering to the principles, because these two dudes decided they were going to rap and rap well. Both. And I think it's a lesson in going back to when things aren't going so well for you. Just go back to your principles, what kind of got you there, what strategy you used to use, just to kind of get you back into a groove. And like I said, for these two gentlemen to like, I'm wholeheartedly respectful of both of them for even like entering this space, because the risk was there, particularly for Drake. The risk was there for you. And not to say anybody can lose their career or lose fans or followers these days. I think we're way past that point of rap, because battle rap used to end careers per se. But it doesn't really do it anymore. But still, to take a loss publicly is still always going to like sting a little bit. It's always going to be something that people can have on you. I respect each of them for like entering the battle with a good amount to risk publicly. So
Let me throw a question that we didn't discuss ahead of time, but certainly I think it makes sense considering Color Group is a challenger brand agency. Who was the challenger in this particular scenario?
Can I'll go. I'll say. That's a good question. Actually, now I'm thinking about it. I was getting ready to say Kendrick was the challenger, but no. Kendrick is actually the one who has been like asking for the smoke for a long time. And so you look at it two ways, right? I feel like if we're just talking about career-wise, like Drake is obviously the more prolific of the two. And that's on purpose, because he purposely puts out a lot of music, and he's like a machine, right? But at the same time, I think the culture bangs with Kendrick a lot more. And also Kendrick has the undisputable classic album in his resume that Drake doesn't have. So it's tough to kind of gauge who is the challenger and who's the champion. I feel like if I was to lean one way, I would say Kendrick is the challenger because he didn't have any battles on record. At the very least, we know Drake had battles and he's won. You know what I mean? So,
and just to kind of give us some grounding here, one of the things that we talk about from a color group perspective and how we think about the definition of a challenger, right, is that you have business ambitions beyond conventional resources to bring change to an existing industry, right? And when you think about how both of them attacked this particular battle, right? So Drake went with a non-traditional approach, bringing in AI, leveraging voices of Pac and Snoop, right? Quite frankly, that was an alternative approach, right, from anything that we had been seeing. Now, obviously, from a situational intelligence perspective, we know that AI is here and is very much prevalent. Hell, I thought it was really a part of an ambassador or an influencer campaign. And I was really waiting for the technology to kind of emerge from who Drake leveraged, when he initially kind of came out with it. And then we really found out, like, no, this is for real, right? Whereas Kendrick also went in a different direction from what he's historically been known for with regards to, dare I say, bop-esque type music, right? I mean, Kendrick, for the most part, has earned a reputation as being a very disciplined and rigorous lyricist, right? That's really a purist, if you will, but not like us, certainly kind of leaned into another caliber of music that ignites emotion or energy, that we won't use that term or definition in this webinar, but y'all know what I'm saying. So I do think that there was an aspect of both of them leveraging challenger tenets and principles and kind of going into war on the premise, right, of understanding personnel and tendencies. Go ahead, Johnathan.
Question. Pose it to the group. Could J. Cole be considered the challenger?
Yes, definitively. And not on the premise of his talent, right? But J. Cole, in my opinion, has a more regional pool. Unfortunately, he has a more regional pool that I think, if people actually open their ears, like you recognize the skill set for what it truly really is.
No, Friday night changed my life. So absolutely.
Yeah, my thoughts. All right. Go ahead.
No, I had nothing. I was just agreeing with Johnathan about Friday Night Lights. So that's all. Yeah.
Gotcha. All right. So creating volume, right? One of the big themes of what was really revealed in this battle, and also in the Jay-Z Nas battle, was really this idea of advocacy and amplification, right? And certainly, I thought we made this point earlier with regards to the skits and the battle. I mean, the skits and the challenges, right? That moment, right, was really the turning point and really trumped the momentum, right, that had been established. Kind of curious to kind of hear from everyone here on the role of audiences in really helping to solidify not only brand positioning, but let me take this a step further and say brand conviction.
I mean, I'd say that volume is everything, right? When you think specifically to the battle, part of the reason, I think folks are landing on the Kendrick win with They're Not Like Us is because it's everywhere, right? Initially, it's like, okay, what's the last tweet that you read? Kind of determine who the winner was in your mind, right? But then now you're seeing constant reminders of that song and how people, how it influenced behavior and action. So it's in every meme, it's in every, people are performing it at birthday parties and baby showers. So it's one of those things that's the defining moment, right? So from a brand perspective, tapping into your audience to fight your battles for you will help you win, right? And letting them speak. So it's not always you. When we think about in general, we always say, third party validation is the best validation. So to have that outside voice speaking on your behalf will always create a win for you.
I
Willie,
would say,
to follow up, or just following up to that point really
okay.
quick. I have an aunt who will fight you tooth and nail if you get her anything other than Coca-Cola, because she is that much of a die-hard Coca-Cola brand advocate. So yeah, to your point, fans really and truly do make a difference, and especially in the context of a rap battle, of course.
Yeah, I was just going to say, from a marketing perspective, thinking about this concept in, what metrics and things that we measure, there's a reason why everyone is wanting to amplify and increase their share of voice. And when we look at the metric share of voice, it's not as many times as the brand is talking about themselves. Share of voice is a calculation of how many conversations are being had about the brand. So we can sit there and talk about ourselves all day, but does that really move the needle on perception or conviction, especially when we're talking about share of voice? So in reality, we want other people to talk about us, hopefully in a positive way, as much as they can. And the emergence, and Nick just dropped this in for you all to read as well, is, one of the things that we talk about is when we talk about amplifying audience voices and fan voices, is already the concept that we know is working and will continue to work, which is this idea of influencer marketers. We're letting our number one advocates, your aunt with Coke, we're letting them do the marketing for us. We are partnering and paying these folks to amplify our voice, get that share of voice, get that pie start, filling in there. And so I think that even just thinking about it as very linear as share of voice and influencer marketing, why creating volume and actually amplifying our fans and amplifying our audiences is so important, because we have seen that tactic work. We have seen, and also it's something we're able to measure as well. And I think, especially coming back to marketing, measurement is always a topic and optimization is always a topic. So how can we measure that? And I think, again, creating volume is kind of our one-to-one with our share of voice, and also the impact of our influencer marketing campaigns. And even with the example we have here, right, even though not as prolific as Kendrick and Drake, Nicki and Meg's little spat that they had back and forth, essentially both of them just dropped their tracks and faded into the mist. And they let Team Barbs and Team Hotties kind of, again, control. They were okay with their end of, and Johnathan, watch your eyes, because I saw the eyes come up when I said Hotties. So I was trying to make sure that, anyway, so they were okay with their audiences controlling the narrative, because they were trying to go on straight volume, straight numbers, with hopefully Barbies versus Hotties, who has the biggest fan base, who has the loudest fan base. So unlike the approach with Kendrick and Drake kind of just going back and dropping the tracks, from a narrative and positioning standpoint, Nicki and Meg took the standpoint of, we're going to let our audience and share a voice. We're going to let them decide the quote unquote winner. And we're going to do volume to volume. We don't have to speak. Our fans are going to speak for us. So two very different approaches. And this approach obviously kind of aligns much with that share of voice and influencer marketing space.
Yeah, real quick, and I'll toss this over to y'all. Two things. One, the Team Hotties versus Team Barbies will be a part of Johnathan Butler's professional development opportunities for the upcoming year. And then number two, right, I do think one of the things Safaniya kind of underpinned, right, is really, brand is the new experience, right? I'm sorry, experience is the new brand, right? And there's a fundamental difference between trying to be seen vis-a-vis people looking for you. And how are you as a brand creating experiences that people are willing to advocate for and share with a level of authenticity and consistency, right, that ultimately elevates your brand positioning for top of mind. So I do think that's a very important point. On the brink of the Team Hottie versus Team Barbie convention, I'm gonna toss it over to you, Johnathan Butler.
What you want to make one more point about it?
Yeah,
it's all good. So I think that was back to Jonathan's point about just loyalty and brand loyalty. Like, you have Drake stands, right? You have Kendrick stands, and you have the majority of people kind of meet in the middle. But what I've found is, and like this is like Jonathan mentioned, like as long as you are consistent and you keep delivering consistent product, consistent content, like just look at the allegations that are within the battle that these two gentlemen have talked about, right? And there are people who are saying, after all the allegations, that I still ride with Drake despite him doing. I still ride with Kendrick despite him doing like I said, as long as your brand is strong and you cater to your demographic as well, you cater to your people that you're trying to attract. I think it's just going to breed success and just long-term prosperity for it. So that's all I had to say.
Cool. Anything before we get to the next point, Jonathan? No. All right. Cool.
I'm Team Hottie. I promise you, I am. I'm Team Hottie.
Oh man. Ultimately, when developing anything, right, you have to keep the end in mind, and that's really around what your goals and what your objectives are. We've talked a little bit about the importance of authenticity. Certainly, we recently had an article come out from T regarding the importance of consistency. We'll be releasing a poll very shortly to those in attendance. But let's talk a little bit about authenticity versus consistency and why each is important.
I'll jump in there. I mean, so when you think about authenticity of a brand, or you think about a brand as a personality, right? Like, who you are is who you are. Like, you can't lie about that. We can see around you over time. So you need to be authentic to what it is that you do, what it is that you offer, and how you present yourself. One, for people to trust it. But beyond that, it needs to be consistent so that we earn that trust over time. Because me saying, hey, we're use Chick-fil-A as an example, right? Hey, we do great customer service. And you go in and one day it's great customer service, and then the second day it's not. That authenticity of being about customer service doesn't prove itself out. But because of that consistency that they have, people go to Chick-fil-A, yes, because of the food, but because of the service first and foremost. So authenticity and consistency in branding is extremely important, because if you think about your authenticity or your behavior, attitude, that can change on a day-to-day basis. You might be a horrible guy on Monday because you got a case of the Mondays, and that's your authentic self, but that's not what we want from you, because you told us that you're this wonderful person. We want that to be consistent. So when you think about branding, that needs to live there. And there's a statement in that article that essentially says, authenticity without consistency is just erratic, and consistency without authenticity lacks soul. So the two work in tandem, and you got to bring them together to really solidify who you are as a brand.
Come on, Darius Lovehall. Any follow-ups to Brother to the Night?
Oh my gosh.
Oh, that was good.
I think when I think about brands too, and I'm looking at some of the poll results come in, I actually think that there's a layer. I think I would, in just my lived experience recently with doing brand work, I would think that actually authenticity is really difficult right now for a lot of brands, because there are so many places that brands can be at once. And they're having kind of like this audience struggle of, who am I on TikTok? Who am I on Instagram? Who am I at the board meetings? Who am I at the environmental pop-ups? And I think sometimes with the authenticity, we try, and when you don't have a nailed down like audience strategy, or you're not being singularly focused on what you are to your audiences, you try to be everything for everyone.
Yep.
And that authenticity starts to really chip away when you put on one face for this audience, turn around and put another face, but then the audience looking at you like, hey,
Who are you?
who are you? Who are you? And so I think for me personally, I think I have struggled a lot with creating and like this logic and strategy around brand authenticity, because when we're asking people who's your audiences, and they give me a scroll of audiences that they want to tap into on their very first campaign, and you have $5.
Just looking like the Ten Commandments.
I'm sitting there, it's like, well, you can't authentically connect with 82 people with the same message and the same creative expression and the same messaging. We need to take it one step at a time. We need to prioritize our audiences. So to me, I think authenticity is super important. And I think it's one thing that, because of the digital nature, and a brand can be everywhere at once, how is it showing up in all these different environments and still having some level of consistency, even though it might be flexing across certain audiences?
And it goes back to the energy and the attitude. And Nick, you mentioned it before about not chasing people, but having people chase you. Find that anchor for whatever your service, product, or whatever is that you can stand on, so that people are seeking you out versus you running after people.
And I think the brands that do this well, personal opinion, are Duolingo and Patagonia. Duolingo's like, look, we're here. We want you to learn a new language, and this is how we do this across our channels and reinforce that message. And Patagonia is pretty much the same. It's, look, we're here to save some trees, and we want to sell you some clothes. And this is how we do that across all of our mediums.
I was reading a book called I haven't finished it yet, but for the Culture by Marcus Collins, and he was talking about PBR beer, how it was like this hipster beer that really nobody really knew about, and then once like an influx of just hipsters came into Brooklyn, is when their sales and it just kind of shot up, because it's kind of aligned with hipster living. And they were asked, I guess they were asked to, like, if they wanted to go to like a major like marketing initiative, and they said no, they're gonna keep it within themselves, and they've stuck to that, and it's worked for them. Like, and they had been out 30, 40 years prior to that, and all of a sudden to see their brand skyrocket just because they stuck to their principles is also really interesting to see. So I was just piggybacking off of what Johnathan was saying.
That actually reminds me of a similar case study, and my favorite marketing campaign of all time is Burberry's Art of the Trench. And this is at the start of social media, so like 2009, 2010, that time frame. They were able to capitalize on, one, a growing medium, and two, an aspirational consumer that said, you know, we're at this point in our life where we want to start buying luxury goods. How can we do that in like a cool way? So they were able to create a microsite that got people to, earliest, I guess, iterations of influencer marketing and UGC, post pictures of themselves across the globe in their trench coats. I wish I was part of that campaign. I unfortunately was not, because I was a pre-rich college student. Not rich yet, but pre-rich college student. So, case in point is being able to tap into not only that aspirational nature of your consumer and understanding that this is who we are as a brand, and this is how we can remain authentic across any channel that we're on, and still remain consistent across any channel that we're on.
My drop. So certainly want to get to the question of the day shortly, but again, we started out by saying we were going to really analyze and evaluate some of these battles, looking through the lens of reputation, recognition, resonance, and relevance. This is a core framework associated with the Color Group and how we approach certain things. So we certainly hope that you enjoyed today's webinar. And then certainly, I gotta open it up and really, asking those in attendance to please, within the chat, identify who you think won between Drake and Kendrick. And certainly, I think some of us have revealed who we thought won, but certainly want to kind of toss it over to our panelists to kind of get a sense of who you thought won between in this battle.
I will start because I'm very non-confrontational and non-violent, and I think that everyone won. I thought that they all entered with different brand goals, and that they walked away with success within their individual brand goals. I will also leave you with a piece of data. So in GWI, they have this kind of like these audience profiles that they make based on like affinity groups. And so when we talk about perception, they have a section in there called hip hop attitude. So like people that are identified as like a hip hop affinity group. And so only 8.6% of respondents say that they associate hip hop with a singular person, item, or place. So less than 10% of hip hop lovers, when you say it, one person comes to mind. So the perception of being number one is just perception. And so for me, you're always going to be number one to your fans. So that's me.
Come on, Safaniya. Now I know somebody else about to say Kendrick, right? Like as a response, but sir, kind of I want to open it up to the panelists.
I don't know what you say to that, right? Like, I mean, I think it at the end of the day, to Safaniya's point, it's about what you want for your brand. Now, when you start talking about culturally, right? I think you still got stands on both sides because they did go, song for song. But again, to what we spoke about earlier, when you talk about creating volume, right now, Kendrick is on top because of the volume. And there's some other underlying factors there because Kendrick is such a recluse, to hear him come out and from a challenger brand standpoint, kind of step outside of his normal action style and drop a bop. The bop is everywhere. So, as much as I'm a Drake lover, I think Kendrick did his thing on this. And by lover, I don't mean like certified, whatever.
We got you, brother. We got you.
Appreciate it.
Yaw Jeez.
I mean, it's Kendrick. I mean, why are we even mincing words here? It's overall impact, the strategy, the diabolicism, if that's a word.
It is now.
I mean, it is now. Like, it's just everything about the way he carried this battle and how he went through the steps of the battle, just masterful to me. And also, he's got the #1 song in the country, and that right there. If we're just talking about, if you want to just add a metrics to it, a lot of Drake fans when he battled Pusha argued that Drake is still the winner because Drake is still going to outsell Pusha. Well, here we are, Kendrick, #1 song in the country, which is something that Drake always aspires to do. So, and also just listening to Drake's tracks, we all know the last track, we all know he's kind of waved the white flag. So once you add all that into it, I just feel like it's Kendrick at the end of the day. I'm not even sure what all the discourse I just went through was, because we all know it. We all know it well. But it's Kendrick.
Johnathan Butler. He was wearing a shirt that is not featured Drake, so I think that's a clear indicator of who he thinks won the battle. I don't know if you can hear me, but I am talking cash money about you right now, good brother.
Wait, okay, who do you think won?
I would like to exercise my Fifth Amendment right. No, honestly, no, the real talk. I mean, listen, I'm a fan of both. I think to y'all's point, the strategy was just very clear, and clear lean with Kendrick. But if we want to talk about strategies, right, you can make an argument for J. Cole. You can make an argument for J. Cole, right, because he lost. If him apologizing was a negative hit to his brand, there is clearly no doubt about his lyrical capabilities. There's a clear delineation now between the lyrical capabilities between Drake and Kendrick. That conversation can still be had between J. Cole and Kendrick. And so as a result, I think from a strategy perspective, he probably had the most effective strategy, period.
Also, to that point, it's crazy. I thought about this like it happened, but you know, he deleted the song off of his album. He called the album "Might Delete Later," which to me, I mean, the two are just. If you want to keep it like that's a genius marketing play in itself.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like.
Well, let's take it a step further.
So,
let's take it a step further. Look at what he said in Middle Child. If I diss a rapper, it won't be for fame, right? Like he called it.
Right.
He called how he would approach, you know, if this ever transpired years ago. So on strategy alone, I'm saying J. Cole.
And that's a long-term brand play. But that's somebody who recognizes their brand. They can be authentic and consistent at its finest.
I also like Jonna in the comments. He was like, Cole was certainly prepared to battle. Beef is what he was smart to avoid. And I think there is a difference.
Yes, that's a mic drop moment. And on that point, we are going to end this webinar. Certainly enjoyed the conversation. This is the first of many from Dope Thinkers Only. And as we see at the Color Group, run with us or run from us.
Run from us.
Everybody.
Salute.